does it feel being Comic-Con?
I love it here. It's so funny because everyone's like, oh, it's so crazy, and actually, we got to go out on the floor. Usually, we never get to go out actually on the floor. I'm so pleased we did. I got to meet Chewbacca and hug him.
Is there a costume you would want to dress up in if you got to like cosplay and go
So
out
many.
on the floor?
So many. I've always wanted to be an Ewok.
Good one.
I was going down the line to Princess Leia. I don't know. Not Ewok.
I've
I saw a really
always.
cute Ewok yesterday.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay, but I've never seen one.
She
Can
had
you?
like a really cute hat. No, she looked really cute.
But where are they? I've been every single Comic-Con Ewok spotting, and I can never
It was
find.
outside at like 11 last night.
She's very small.
No.
She wasn't a small Ewok.
No. Yeah.
She was a tall Ewok.
She's a human.
Does she have a full fluffy outfit on?
No.
Ah, you see,
Yeah.
that's what I'm talking about. I would make it just because it's Comic-Con. I want to make her. I've already thought about this. Put on a little kind of bikini and call her a hot wok.
That's a good one.
On top of the little fur outfit. We're going way off subject.
What do you like about your role?
What do I like about my role? The thing I love about my role and the thing I love about this show is how on topic it is with everything that's happening on our planet. I'm very separate from the Navy conversation and very away from that world. Rachel is purely virology and human healing and science, and I am deeply interested in the affairs of our species and our relationship with the planet and our relationship with viruses, our relationship with, I suppose, our own survival. And so I have been looking at this for years, and even before this role came about. So the opportunity to be able to work with writers and virologists and talk about this, and talk about Ebola, talk about the mutation of these genius characters, actually, viruses become characters, is amazing for me. And so I feel like I'm in my own world really every day. I'm in my lab and noodling away with petri dishes and talking to the scientists, and to a lot of people that's sort of boring, but I think it's incredibly pertinent because everyone's talking about blowing things up and everyone's talking about this gun and this missile, which is so extraordinary because it's a complete dichotomy, because the show is actually about healing and yet we're on a destroyer. The mission is to heal and cure, and we're on a missile, we're on a boat of destruction. I'm going to get shot for calling it a boat.
What is it like playing such a strong female character in a science-based role? Because it's really still not something we see a lot on television.
Well, it's really difficult for me because I'm always playing someone who's with a gun, whether it's Strike Back or Doomsday or I'm used to swords, I'm used to AKs, I'm usually the one picking up the artillery and reloading mags and learning the fight sequences, and so actually it's difficult for me because I love that. I absolutely adore all of those roles. But at this stage of my life, to actually be more cerebral and to be able to be really smart and strong and balanced, and also not be. She doesn't need to, I could have stereotyped her and made her more of a whipcracker, and I just like the fact that she's on point and on task and doesn't really mess around, and I don't think she represents too much of a chick or trying to do a man's job. I think we've created a woman who is about a job, and everyone wants to get involved with the romance stuff and talk to me about, and I'm like, Rachel doesn't have time for that. Stop asking me questions about who she's going to make out with next. So I try to keep the integrity of the character, hopefully.
So how important is it to try to keep your character separate, to avoid the tendency, I guess, to try to integrate more with the Navy aspects of it and stay kind of separate from that? And be like more of your own, independent character rather than get caught up in the whole Navy-ness that's going on.
At the end of the day, she's gained support from Eric's character, from Chandler and from Slattery, and they have passed that on to the rest of the ship, and I think that it's really important that she adhered to the world that they live in because they're ultimately protecting her and the cause, which is everyone's cause. And so I think even though it goes against her nature and she would probably like to say, I'm doing it my way, actually she's pretty respectful for the most part because it doesn't work to go against the grain. It works to work with people, to be diplomatic. And listen, we still butt heads. And at the end of the day, at the end of the other day, the virus is in control, and the cure and how we distribute that and the science behind that is their ever-evolving story. And she can only do so much with what she has. So we're all at the mercy of that evolution. So it makes everybody quite humble. It makes Chandler humble. It makes her, because really we're no pun intended, but we are in uncharted territory. So I think we all have to be good kids and play nicely together. We'll try to.
So Rachel basically just saved the world by figuring out the virus. And what's the next real big challenge? Are we going to see another mutation in the strain? What's coming?
Distribution. It's the distribution and the other human beings who have their own agendas, who either, and it's the same as what's happening with us with Ebola. Ebola has mutated, and it's now disguising itself as thyroid. A lot of people don't know about this, but I happen to have friends in Africa because I do a lot of work in Africa, and I get all the inside scoop. But there's a lot of people who want the blood samples, or they want because they want to weaponize it, or they want to be able to make a cure because there's a lot of money to be made off that. So you've got those people who they want her for her knowledge because she holds all the knowledge. So she comes up against that. She also comes up against people who don't want the planet to be cured. So who could have ever imagined that there'd be a sort of army of almost like an Aryan race? Is that's sort of what we're dealing with? Is saying we want to get rid of all of you and be the superpower. So that's a pretty big challenge. So what she has to come up with, and what I really love the writers for, is that today we just deal with vaccinations, and the problem with vaccinations is preservatives. The problem with preservatives is autoimmune disease and neurotoxins, which means anything from autism to MS to Parkinson's it goes on. And so I'm really happy to say that the writers have been really open to creating a way of spreading a vaccination or spreading the cure, which is incredibly innovative, and it's something that Rachel ultimately has to come up with. But the process in coming up with that, and the way in which she comes up with that, is pretty genius. So hopefully you guys will. I think it's awesome, but hopefully you guys will too. But maybe you.
Do you prefer a show like this where you say, "Oh, there's a light at the end of the tunnel"?
I think the light at the end of the tunnel would be if the show continues, if I had it my way, I would be talking about how we are evolving as a species and how we're correcting the behavior that got us here in the first place. Who are the people who are actually implementing changes to make sure we don't get ourselves in this shit again? Because ultimately we're in this predicament because of ourselves. And so I'm interested in actually finding the group of people who don't sign in the same governments, who don't try and just say, let's go back to what we had. And the problem with us is that we always want to go back to what we had, when we were great once. It's like, no, guys, we screwed up. Who are the people who are really... there's an amazing man called Paul Stamets who's actually, and you should look up his work. He does work with mycelium, with fungi. He works with the CDC and with NASA. He's at the forefront of creating cures for viruses and also basically a myriad of he had a solution for the oil slick for when there was the oil spill. There are all these incredible people. So for me, rather than freeze us all like deer in headlights and say, this is our problem and we're all kind of screwed, what are we going to do now? Let's just keep on doing the same thing. I'm like, okay, how can we innovate and create a planet where actually we're living much more symbiotically with our planet and we're a much healthier, much more vibrant species? But I'm a hippie, so...